Tarot cards, a card game from the Renaissance, or a tool for divination, dating all the way back to ancient Egypt. In today's video, I'll be going over the origin of tarot and the various other theories of their supposed ancient origins and uses. Today, the accepted belief of the origins of tarot date to the 1440s in Italy, though it likely had evolved from a game of the previous century. The oldest surviving cards came from around this time, being 15 cards from the Visconti Sforza decks, commissioned by the Viscontis, a Milanese family that greatly influenced the cultural life of northern Italy in the 14th and 15th centuries. They are said to have been made by Bonifacio Bembo, an Italian fresco artist, who flourished between 1447 and 1478. The deck consists of 11 trump cards, 6 court cards, being the queen, king, male knight, female knight, a male valet and a female valet, as well as 3 theological virtues, faith, hope, and charity. The use of a female knight and valet may also indicate it for the use of a female member of the court. The cards were used for the game called Trionfi, which used 70 cards inspired by the theatrical festivals called Trionfo of the Renaissance. It typically featured gilded decoration and paintings of personified allegorical motifs such as death, the hanged man, the tower. And by the 1500s, the fool joined the cast of characters on the cards. The game became known as tarot in southern France, which later evolved into tarot. The cards had no occult meaning until the 1700s, when in 1773, a series of French volumes called The Primeval World analyzed and compared to the modern world. Anthony Court de Gebelin, who was a former Protestant priest, proposed the theory that the cards came from ancient Egypt and that they contained the wisdom of Thoth, and that the word tarot came from 2 Egyptian words, tar, meaning road, and ra, meaning wisdom. Around this time, Jean-Baptiste Alliot, writing under the name Italia, which is simply his last name reversed, popularized using tarot for divination and was the first person known to history to have made a living from it. Eliphas Levi theorized that the cards correlated to the Hebrew alphabet and thus connected to the Kabbalah, believing the laws of all phenomena are represented by the symbols of the tarot, and the numerical values of the cards correspond to that of the phenomena. Also, that as every structure is made of its components, so the tarot represents the components of philosophy. An imprisoned person, writes Eliphas Levi, with no other book than the tarot, if he knew how to use it, could in a few years acquire universal knowledge and would be able to speak on all subjects, unequaled learning, and inexhaustible eloquence. There have been many disagreements on the tarot, though, as Levi discredited Gebelin and Italia. Levi was then to be rejected by Arthur Edward Waite and Paul Case, saying Levi was using it as a way to misguide his students. The followers of Levi, especially Papists, Christian Westcott and Scherer, regarded by the Reformed Taroists as honest but benighted individuals who wandered in the darkness for lack of Pamela Coleman Smith's new deck of tarot cards with revisions by Mr. Waite. Most writers on the tarot, Waite being an exception, were going with the hypothesis that the 22 major tarot correspond to the Hebrew alphabet, based on the coincidence that both consist of 22 parts. Postel, Levi, and St. Martin all wrote books divided into the 22 major tarots. Assuming the Kabbalah to hold the solution to the tarot riddle, seekers have often ignored other possible lines of research. The task, however, of discovering the proper relationships sustained by the tarot trumps to the letters of the Hebrew alphabet and to the paths of wisdom thus far has not been met with any great measure of success. The major trumps of the tarot and the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet cannot be synchronized without first fixing the correct place of the unnumbered or zero card, Lamat, the Fool. Levi places this card between the 20th and 21st tarots, assigning it to the Hebrew letter Shin. The same order is followed by Pappus, Christian, and Waite. The last, however, declaring this arrangement to be incorrect. Westcott makes the zero card the 22nd of the major trumps. On the other hand, both Court de Jebelin and Paul Case place the unnumbered card before the first numbered card of the major trumps. For if the natural order of the cards, according to either the Pythagorean or Kabbalistic system, be adhered to, the zero card must naturally precede the number 1. This does not dispose of the problem, however, for efforts to assign a Hebrew alphabet to each tarot trump in sequence produce an effect far from convincing. Mr. Waite, who re-edited the tarot, expresses himself thus: I am not be included among those who are satisfied that there is a valid correspondence between Hebrew letters and tarot trump symbols. The real explanation may be that the major tarot trumps are no longer in the same sequence as they originally were. Mr. Case has developed a system which, to most, depends largely upon two dependable points, namely the accuracy of Mr. Waite's revised tarot and the justification for assigning the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet to the unnumbered or zero card, since Aleph, the first Hebrew letter, has the numerical value of 1. Its assignment to the zero card is equivalent to the statement that 0 is equal to the letter Aleph, and therefore synonymous with the number 1. Court de Jebelin assigned the zero card to Ein Sof, the unknowable first cause, as the central panel of the Bembine table represents the creative power surrounded by 7 triads of manifesting divinities. So may the zero card represent that eternal power of which the 21 surrounding or manifesting aspects are but limited expressions. Manly P. Hall says, if the 21 major trumps be considered as limited forms existing in the abstract substance of the zero card, it then becomes their common denominator. Which letter, then, of the Hebrew alphabet is the origin of all the remaining letters? The answer is apparent: Yod. In the presence of so many speculations, one more may not offend. The zero card, Lamat, the Fool, has been likened to the material universe because the mortal sphere is the world of unreality. The lower universe, like the mortal body of man, is but a garment, a motley costume, well likened to cap and bells. Beneath the garments of the Fool is the divine substance, however, of which the jester is but a shadow. This world is a Mardi Gras, a pageantry of divine sparks masked in the garbs of fools. Was not this zero card, the Fool, placed in the tarot deck to deceive all who would not pierce the veil of illusion? He continues by saying the tarot cards were entrusted by the illumined hierophants of the mysteries into the keeping of the foolish and the arrogant, thus becoming playthings, in many instances even instruments of vice. Man's evil habits therefore actually became the unconscious perpetrators of his philosophical precepts. We must admire the wisdom of the initiates, writes Papus, who utilized vice and made it produce more beneficial results than virtue. Does this act of the ancient priest itself afford any proof that the entire mystery of the tarot is wrapped up in the symbolism of its zero card? If knowledge was thus entrusted to fools, should it not be sought for in this card? It is also believed that if Lamat be placed before the first card of the tarot deck and on the others laid out in a horizontal line in sequence from left to right, it will be found that the Fool is walking toward the other trumps as though about to pass through the various cards like the spiritually hoodwinked and bound neophyte. Lamat is about to enter upon the supreme adventure, that of passage through the great gates of the divine wisdom. If the zero card be considered as extraneous to the major trumps, this destroys the numerical analogy between these cards and the Hebrew letters by leaving one letter without a tarot correspondent. In this event, it will be necessary to assign the missing letter to the hypothetical tarot card called the elements, assumed to have been broken up to form the 56 cards of the minor trumps. It is possible that each of the major trumps may be subject to similar division. According to Manly P. Hall, in his book, The Secret Teachings of the Ages, he claims that they originate from India or Arabia, then to southern Europe, or that the Templars brought them back from the Saracens or some other magical sect from Syria in that time. And to avoid prosecution, the Templars would act as if the cards were for amusement. Miss John Van Rensselaer stated that the cards were brought by the home-returning warriors who imported many of the newly acquired customs and habits of the Orient to their own countries. Seems to be a well-established fact, and it does not contradict the statement made by some writers who declare that the gypsies, who about that time began to wander over Europe, brought with them and introduced cards, which they used, as they do at the present day, for divining the future. And in his work, The Gypsies, Samuel Robert says this of their Egyptian origin. In one place he writes, when gypsies originally arrived in England is very uncertain. They are first noticed in our laws by several statutes against them in the reign of King Henry VIII, in which they are described as outlandish people, calling themselves Egyptians, who do not profess any craft or trade, but go on about in great numbers. A curious legend relates that after the destruction of the Serapeum in Alexandria, the large body of attendant priests banded themselves together to preserve the secrets of the rites of Serapis, their descendants, the gypsies, carrying with them the most precious of the volumes saved from the burning library, the Book of Enoch, or Hoth, the Tarot, became wanderers upon the face of the earth, remaining a people apart, with an ancient language and a birthright of magic and mystery. Tarot is also an element in Rosicrucian symbolism. Their claimed book of knowledge, the Rota Mundi, and they claim that Rota rearranged is Tarot, the supposed ancient name of the cards. W.F.C. Wigston claimed to have evidence that Sir Francis Bacon used the tarot in his ciphers, the numbers 21, 56, and 78, which all relate to visions in the tarot deck, are frequently in Bacon's cryptograms. And in the Shakespearean folio, the Christian name of Sir Bacon appears 21 times on page 56, as well as the Pythagorean numerologist would see important relationships between the designs and numbers of the tarot. As you can see, many see and apply importance to the cards and of its numbers. Rather than the original Christian imagery used in the original decks, most came to use the Rider-Waite's deck's symbolism and art style. This deck follows the card format and was designed and published by Arthur Waite and illustrated by Pamela Coleman Smith in 1909. 123 years later, and we still use similar symbolism, and the meanings are still derived from this deck in today's instructional books on tarot. It is believed the characters embellishing the decks were based on Pamela's social circle. The most distinguished of these is possibly Henry Irving, the Victorian-era actor-manager who was later knighted. It is said he may have been one of the inspirations as well to Bram Stoker's Dracula. The mysterious figures of the Rider-Waite deck made their first appearances as early as 1904 in Smith's reproduction of Sir Henry Irving as Cardinal Wolsey in William Shakespeare's Henry VIII. It was pen and ink work, which was part of a number of postcards and posters Smith made for Irving to promote the Lyceum's plays. The 78 illustrations in the deck represent archetypal subjects, that each is meant to be a portal to their own realm of signs, symbols, and divination. Queens, knights, fools, magicians, priestesses, and a whole host of arcane paraphernalia all dwell in this realm. The originality of the deck style, draftsmanship, and composition made for an achievement of aesthetic, but simultaneously displaying Smith's brilliant imagination for fantasy, folly, ecstasy, death, and the macabre. The cards have not only been restricted to the world of divination and card games, though, but it has almost become an artistic medium in itself, used in fashion, music, television, and cinema, from such brands as Christian Dior and Maria Grazia to JoJo's Bizarre Adventures creator Hirohiko Araki based the main characters of his third series on a mixture of the major arcane and Egyptian deities. The cards, starting as a game, later to be imbued in an occult light, now to be used in everyday objects and media, have become a staple of Gothic and alternative culture. As to the original game, it is still played, though primarily still in Europe, such as Italy, France, Austria, and Germany. Thank you for watching today's video, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know what topic you would like me to do next, and it may be my next video.